Hi guys, welcome to week 29 Hard Questions. We got a little bit more meat for us this week from some of the stories that are happening, but I wanted to observe one or two things first. Isaiah 25, 6 through 8 says, "In this mountain the Lord of hosts will make for all people a feast of choice pieces, a feast of wines on the lees, of fat things full of marrow, of well-refined wines on the lees, and he will destroy on this mountain the surface of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. He will swallow up death forever. And the Lord God will wipe away tears from all faces. The rebuke of his people he will take away from all the earth, for the Lord has spoken." And I wanted to bring out just a couple of things here. This is in Isaiah 25. This is happening probably around the time of Hezekiah, and Isaiah has been given this vision. And what does it say? There's going to be a feast. It's going to be a feast for all peoples. He's going to take away the covering over all the peoples. He's going to take away the veil that covers all the nations, the goyim, that the Jews were not terribly fond of. But it says here, God's going to take away the veil that covers all nations. He's going to come, he's going to wipe away the tears, and he's going to take away the rebuke from all the earth. Well, we know when that happens. Isaiah is talking about a time about 700 years after his own life, when the Lord takes away the veil that covers all the nations, and the veil is split in the temple, and when he takes away the tears that are in all eyes, bringing the joy that comes in the morning, and when he takes away the rebuke that is over all the earth by putting it on his own Son. And just to see, we should be giving thanks that 700 years before, God's already preparing the people with a promise of his goodness and his redemption. And he's going to swallow away death forever. It's going to go away. So that's just his goodness. That's free. Isaiah 26:19. Last week I talked to you a little bit about the pictures of resurrection in the Old Testament. Isaiah 26:19. "Your dead shall live. Together with my dead body they shall arise. Awake and sing, you who dwell in dust. For your dew is like the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead." That one day, and this is in Isaiah, this is 700 years before Jesus, it says that the earth is going to cast its dead out, that those who dwell in the dust are going to wake up and sing. And so we see this picture in the Bible over and over and over again that gives us a living hope that was prophesied of 700 years before Jesus to prepare the way for him when he would come and to give us a context for what his crucifixion means. So that's just another good thing. For a hard question here, 2 Chronicles 32:1 says, "After these deeds of faithfulness, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and entered Judah." The prologue to that is in pages 798 and 799. It's about 100 pages ago because of all the Psalms. What do we see here? It's after Hezekiah's deeds of faithfulness, all the good things that Hezekiah has done. Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, comes and enters Judah. In 722 BC, Assyria had come in and taken captive Israel, the northern kingdom, just destroyed it. They took a lot of people outside. It's sort of a divide and conquer thing, so they took them and put them in other nations, and they brought people from different nations to come live in that territory. So that's establishing the Samaritans. Now, you have where the north used to be a physical buffer for Judah, and so if anybody was going to come and they were going to invade, they were going to hit the north first, and that would give Judah some breathing space. That was taken away when Assyria destroyed Israel. So now you see in Hezekiah's day, after Hezekiah has been so faithful, Sennacherib comes, and he would probably have taken a northern route up and above the Sea of Galilee, and then he comes down and around the west, outside of Jerusalem, and he comes and he actually takes the city of Lachish, which is the second city in Judah, so the second most powerful, second most productive, and he lays siege to it. This is something we see. Sennacherib goes back to Assyria in the middle of all of this, and he actually has a relief carving commissioned for his palace, and it shows the siege of Lachish. If you Google that, you can see pictures of it. But so his archers come in ranks. They have engines of war. They have these chariots they push before them that actually knock bricks out of the walls and allow them to start to scale the walls. They knock people off the walls. They take them, they impale them with spears. They stretch them out by their hands and feet, and they peel their skin off of them. They also take other people and they put rings in their noses and in their ears and in their mouths, and they lead them as captives to bow down to the king. And so this is a really awful situation. You have Sennacherib coming and doing this, destroying these people. And basically what he's done in coming down of the west coast, he's come from the north. There are no resources left in the north. He's taken all of that. Now he's come over the west, and there are no resources that Hezekiah can get from the west. To go to the east, Hezekiah would have to cross the Jordan and get some resources from there. But those tribes have already been taken care of. There's nobody over there to help him. And then in the south, the only thing that he has left is Egypt. And he's been told many times, don't you dare trust Egypt. So when we look at this situation where Hezekiah is now surrounded, there are 185,000 Assyrians camped outside of the walls. This is how bleak this is. There's nobody who's going to help. There is absolutely no way. And this comes in right after it says, after these deeds of faithfulness. So what's going on here? You know, what I can tell, this seems to happen over and over again in the southern kingdom of Judah, where you have a righteous king, he begins to follow the Lord, and then some crazy, terrible nation comes up against him, whether it's a 1,000,000-man Ethiopian army, or whether it's an enormous army from Israel itself come down to destroy them. Here it's Assyria. Why does God let this happen? What he's doing here is he's setting Assyria up for a monumental failure that's actually going to decimate a large part of their army, going to take a bunch of people down. It's going to destroy a lot of their confidence in themselves as warriors. Even when Sennacherib goes back to Assyria, he doesn't mention that he was beaten here. He only has this huge relief commissioned of his victory at Lachish, which was actually after that a destruction. And so God is setting this guy up for a huge failure, but what he's also doing is he's setting Hezekiah up to see how incredible God's hand is for him. Because when Hezekiah sees all of this stuff happening, he says, don't be worried, don't be afraid. There are more with us than there are with them. Now, physically, are there more with the people of Judah than there are with the people of Assyria? Absolutely not. They've just come in and ransacked the country. But are there more with them? Yes, because the Lord's army is fighting for him. And so that's what happens. He goes to Hezekiah. He lays out this letter that the king of Assyria has written him. He brings all of this stuff that the Rabshakeh has said about him, that, you've destroyed the worship of your God. You've taken away the high places. How is your God possibly going to protect you? How is he going to do anything for you? This is all your fault. You've destroyed your own protection. Hezekiah goes and lays this in front of Isaiah, lays this in front of the Lord, speaks to the Lord, and the Lord speaks back and says, he's not even going to shoot an arrow over your wall. And in that night, 185,000 of them died. And so what's going on here? God is setting this up so that Hezekiah and the rest of Judah can see his mighty hand and his mighty power, how he protects and takes care of someone who will put his trust in him. So that's what's going on. That's why after these deeds of faithfulness, something so strange and terrible happens, because God's going to pull something even better out of it. So another one in 2 Chronicles 32:31, it says, however, regarding the ambassadors of the princes of Babylon, whom they sent to him to inquire about all the wonder that was done in the land, God withdrew from him in order to test him, that he might know all that was in his heart. Was this a little weird when you read it? God withdrew from Hezekiah in order to test him, that he might know all that was in his heart. There's a couple of things that are happening here. I think it's something really common in what Hezekiah does. It's very simple for us as human beings. When God does something amazing on our behalf, it's really simple for us to make it all about us. And that's, I think, a temptation that all of us have. And so that's what Hezekiah does here. The Babylon's messengers come through Judah. He shows them absolutely everything. Why? He's courting their favor. And does he really need Babylonian favor when his great God has just destroyed Assyria? He does not. But he's courting their favor. And what he's really doing is he's just giving them an advertisement of all the things they can come back and steal. But what do we make of this verse 31? God withdraws from Hezekiah. The word here is azav, which Jesus actually uses, but in Aramaic, when he cries out from the cross and he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. In Hebrew, it would be azavthani. Why are you abandoning me? That's something that goes back, it echoes Psalm 22. The word azav can mean abandon, it can mean withdraw, just remove your presence from, and that's what God's doing here. But what's, I think, probably more interesting for us is where it says that in order to test him, that he might know all that was in his heart. Is God tempting Hezekiah? The Bible says in another place that God doesn't tempt. He doesn't tempt anyone to do evil. That's not what he's about. So, what does this word really mean? It's a word that we see multiple times. It's the word nasah, and it appears in Genesis 22:1, where God tests Abraham to see if he'll actually obey him, to see if he loves him. And he says, "Give me your son, your only son whom you love." It's in Judges 3, verse 4, where God tests the Israelites by using the pagans in the land to see whether Israel will obey his commands. And it shows up in 1 Samuel 17:39, where David refuses to wear Saul's armor because he hasn't tested it yet. I think that's probably a clue to the meaning of this word when we look at it. Is God just playing with him to see what's going on with him? Is God tempting him? No, God's testing him the same way that you would test a sword to see if it will hold up in battle. And so this is God's trying his edges to see if he will hold up in the battle. Um, and I think, we have to ask, does God already know Hezekiah's heart? Does God already know Abraham's heart? Yes. None of this is a surprise to God. But who doesn't know their hearts? Abraham, Hezekiah, they don't know their hearts. And so what this does is this trial actually reveals Hezekiah's heart, because he's proud of his riches. As Matthew Henry says, God left him that he might be proud of his riches, that he might not be proud of his holiness. So Hezekiah is proud of his riches, and he shows it off as if it had anything to do with him. And then when the prophet comes and says, because of this, everything that you've shown them will be carried away, and your family as well, he responds a lot like Neville Chamberlain in World War II when he says, oh, at least there's peace in my time. And we see his heart revealed again. There's just this, I don't really care what happens afterwards. If my time is okay, then that's all I really care about. And so we have to reconcile this with Hezekiah is a king who trusts God in such a way that there hasn't been anyone before him or after him like this. And at the same time, here's this guy that gets so puffed up and full of pride. And what's going on? Well, that's us as humans. That's absolutely us as humans. And I think it's one of the things that we have in common with Hezekiah, that God will occasionally, I think, allow us to pass through a time where we will actually see our own hearts. When he's done this to me, it's horrible, it's wrenching, I hate seeing my own heart because it's bad, but it's also a kindness, because then I can't be proud and puffed up and think that I'm going to be okay. I have to be humble, and I have to be dependent on God for grace, and I have to come to him for help, because I am awful. And so when God allows us to see our own hearts, it's painful, it's terrible, it's the worst mirror ever. But it's also the kindest thing he can do for us, because it keeps us dependent on him. So I think that's what's going on. It just makes me really happy I'm not a king, that a whole kingdom's not relying on my faith. That's grateful for that. So I hope that helps you this week, and I hope this has been a good time.